In astrology, Mars is the planet of action, ambition, and desire. It could be great as it describes your motivation and your willingness to take action, or it could be challenging as it separates you from other people and makes you stand apart in unhealthy ways. In this video, I'm going to take Mars through all 12 zodiac signs. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive readings. If you enjoy my content, please take a few seconds of your time to show your support by leaving a like or a comment, subscribing, and pressing the notification bell. All of that really helps my channel grow, helps YouTube algorithm be a friend and not a foe. You can also show your support and leave your thanks by buying me a coffee or a tea, whatever you want. I appreciate that as well. Before we dive in, if you want to know more about your chart, if you have important questions, feel confused or lost in life, you can book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. On my website, you can also find the variety of candles and oils I create. For example, since we're talking about Mars, I'd like to highlight my Exalted Mars candle. It is decorated with the garnet stone, which is the stone of Mars. It was created when the Mars was in Capricorn, which is the sign of exaltation, helping you access the perseverance, the determination, the stamina, reach your goals, take action, reach fitness goals, commit to things, and find success. There's also a Mars Cazimi candle, which was created when Mars was in Scorpio in the perfect exact conjunction with the sun. Cazimi is the moment when the planet is empowered. So here, the energy of the warrior, Mars really likes being in Scorpio. Mars is focused, sort of ninja-like in Scorpio. This is encapsulated and captured in this candle. And it is also beautiful for courage, discipline, passion, fitness goals, and more. Especially good for people born, both of these candles are actually really good for people born with their natal Mars in Cancer, Taurus, or Libra, the signs of fall and detriment, Mars in the 8th or 12th houses, Mars retrograde, where the energy of Mars can be a little bit unpredictable, and if your Mars is conjoining, squaring, or opposing Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune. Highly recommend these candles for you guys. So let's talk about Mars. Mars is the first planet outside of the Earth's orbit. It's right next to us, and it has a reddish surface. Astronomically, it's like the planet that has a little bit of like colder, redder geology. It's like colder because it's further from the sun, redder because it has like reddish surface. And for a long time in almost every culture, Mars has been associated with the god of war, Aries. And so he's been connected with like conflict, blood, and fiery affairs. So his red nature was literally connected to blood, fire, drama. Mars in general has a contradictory nature, right? There is both a power, like if you think of a soldier, right? Like Mars is very much connected to the soldier, the god of war. So there's both the power to create evil, because Mars also rules like blades and cutting, and like severing and separating, ending things. So it can both create evil, hurt, like a soldier can hurt people, it can kill people. But there's also the power to stand up, to sacrifice, to defend, to sort of have like more noble goals, right? Mars is also very much connected to the archetype of the blacksmith. Someone who like uses the force and determination and stamina to beat the metal into shape. And that's where like, when I talk about like Mars Cazimi and Mars in Scorpio, that is that Mars. Like Mars and Scorpio people have the will to succeed. They're unbendable, unstoppable. They just go and persist through difficulty. Like if they made their mind up about something, good luck trying to change it. So it's like, like Mars as a blacksmith can like beat us into shape, can help us reach our goals, can help us persevere through like hard hits and collisions. And it's not, it's not like Venus that is all about like chilling in the beautiful garden smelling flowers. With Mars, we overcome hardship. We go at hardship sometimes in order to create better version of ourselves, in order to commit to things that we feel passionate about. So what does Mars rule in astrology? It rules your physical energy. So it's responsible for your sex drive, for your passion, for your desire. You know, wearing red, the color of Mars. So if you're born with Mars in Aries, you might be actually turned on by the color red. Let me know if that's you, but maybe don't. It also represents your ability to turn ideas into action. And a lot, once again, will depend on the sign your Mars in. So maybe if your Mars is in Aries or Scorpio or Capricorn, the sign of rulership and exaltation, you're really good at taking action and turning things, creating, putting them into progress and, you know, putting them into action, creating progress. But then if your Mars is in Cancer, Taurus, and Libra, you know, Mars and Libra people are so creative and so powerful in like creative realm, but sometimes maybe it takes them longer. Same with Mars and Taurus. They might have a lot of ideas, but not rush to take action. Mars and Cancer can be a little bit impeded by the emotions. That's why for people with those placements, my candles are a really, really good fit because they can help access that powerful energy. Mars also rules over initiative. It rules over courage. The stronger your Mars, the more courageous you are. To give you an example, I have a client with Mars and Aries in the 8th house of sudden events, death, transformation. And she was at a concert and there was a shooter and she did not lose her cool. This is what having a strong Mars in any house, but specifically in this house like of sudden events, drama, tension is. Just level-headed, calm, collected, good under pressure. It represents aggression, forcefulness, your will to win, your competitiveness, your physical endurance. And like quite literally, wherever Mars is placed, the sign Mars is placed, it shows how willing you are to fight for things. Are you going to fight for things, or are you going to like step away? Are you going to bring somebody else to fight for things, fight the battles for you? Or like, you know, what's your predisposition when it comes to fight and drama and conflicts? And so obviously, you know, the positive manifestation of Mars, the healthy Mars, can create someone passionate, willing to fight for other people, speaking up for other people, determined, pursuing the goals, not giving up. And the more shadow side of Mars, which anyone is capable of doing both of those, can create someone combative, impatient, and sort of more violent, which is not great. Not good. Let me know what you think, and if you want to know more, if you want me to look at your chart, you can book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com, and we're gonna break Mars down through all 12 zodiac signs and tell you what it means to have Mars in different signs. Starting with Mars in Aries. This is Mars in the sign of rulership. So when Mars is placed in Aries or Scorpio, it's considered to be in its home sign. It's empowered. It doesn't mean you're protected from drama or friction in your life. In fact, sometimes it's the opposite. With Mars in Aries, you can be competitive. You can be an athlete. You can be a fighter with this placement. You can be a fighter with a lot of other Mars placements, but with Mars in Aries, you a lot of times seek out friction, or you cannot avoid friction on many levels. So the difference with strong Mars versus the weaker Mars is that when your Mars is strong, you have the power to overcome. You're likely to come out victorious. I've heard it explained, I've heard like strong Mars explained as you go to war and you may see your friends die around you, but you survive, right? So it's not always just like really easy. So Mars in Aries, Mars in rulership, young, sort of, you know, youthful Mars, fresh Mars, very much headfirst into things, very impulsive with sex, with projects, with their goals. They're just, you know, like you were interested in it, you're gonna do it, you're gonna go for it. You may be quite drawn to new experiences and you may be quite entrepreneurial. So starting new businesses, you know, exploring sort of new techniques, maybe like tinkering with cars, maybe building cars that nobody has seen before. And that like kind of head first, straight first energy shows up also in a way of you facing obstacles. Like you can be like, I feel like whenever I think of Aries, I think of like a toddler that like runs headfirst into something and then maybe like cries and screams for a little bit, but then pushes forward and then like continues going, right? Doesn't give up. Very intuitive on many levels too, because it's like a strong Mars, so you may know where to go, which direction to take. But at times, like I think, I think the shadow side of Mars and Aries could be being like a little bit easily frustrated, sort of blowing up, maybe hurting people around you, but they need to learn that you're not trying to hurt them, that that's just how you work. You get excited, you express this excitement, you follow through, and then you move on. You get upset and then you move on. You don't necessarily hold on to these feelings. Sexually, I think you might be someone who is a lot more interested in like quickies, maybe want to have like more sex, more fast sex. Attracted to people who wear red, or you yourself wear red, attracted to people who are like direct, courageous, or maybe sometimes quite opposite from you. Someone like if you're very like, say you're Scorpio rising or an Aries rising in Mars, with Mars and Aries, you might be attracted to someone who's actually like a little bit more chill, so they can help you chill. And also watch out for the tendency with this placement to start a lot of things but not necessarily finish them, because you are really good at starting things, and which could also make you like a really good entrepreneurial person, like a business owner, but someone who maybe has like an agency that helps people get their business off the ground. So that is quite likely. But I think, yeah, like you're very brave, you're unafraid of like, if you're like a journalist, you go right into the middle of things. If you are, if you're like a fighter for things, you're maybe a firefighter who goes into like the burning building. You're very competitive for sure. You're very like combative, very protective of people you love. Like people with strong Aries placements tend to be like the biggest cheerleaders, biggest like, fighters for those they love. Let me know how this resonates. And if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Now, if you were born with with Mars in Taurus, that is a Venus-ruled Mars. And so it has that Venusian touch to it, right? Like Mars in Taurus is Ferdinand the Bull, or bull in the china shop, right? Like sort of big, a little bit clunky, a little bit like sort of moving very slowly. And like it's funny because Mars in Taurus, people can sometimes even look very like stocky and very sturdy and very maybe like broad shouldered than like bigger on some levels. And that applies, I think, in general for Tauruses. They may have like very thick neck. Maybe they use their neck to fight the battles or something like that. But because Mars in Taurus is Mars in a Venus-ruled sign, it's considered to be in its detriment, which suggests that it's less martial Mars. Doesn't mean you're less of a person if you have this placement, but it's less martial Mars. And in this case, I highly recommend my Mars Cazimi or Exalted Mars candle. Both of these are great for you because these have Mars that is capable of like going for it, taking action, being persevering. Because, Mars and Taurus, they're very good in the middle. Like they're very good at maintaining things, but sometimes they may struggle starting things. Like they might take longer to figure things out. They might end up being comfortable. You guys might end up being comfortable in a familiar situation that maybe you're frustrated with, but you're like, you've planted yourself into it. Like Ferdinand the Bull, right? Someone who's like laying in the field, smelling flowers, rather would do that than like go out there and fight for things. But I think once you get started, because Taurus is the sign opposite Scorpio, so you also have this very much like staying power, persevering power, consistency, determination, willingness to keep going. You just struggle a little bit like starting things. You can be a little bit more stubborn. You can be a little bit conflict avoidant, but that doesn't always work out, especially if you've been like building up a lot of frustration. So maybe at times you express it and people are a little bit surprised. Maybe you deal with conflict in a little bit like an indirect way. You don't initiate it. You're just like approach it if it happens. you're maybe, you know, in a sexually, you might be like turned on by neck kisses and be quite like very, it's a very sensual placement. So it's like, it's quite sexual and it's quite sort of, you know, it like Mars and Taurus savors the moment. It's in the moment. It's there. It's very tactile, very like appreciates the physical senses, maybe bringing food into the bedroom using like strawberries, whipped cream, etc. So it's like very kind of slow moving, but also like sensual. And you can, you know, you can actually be someone who like teaches people around you to slow down. And like, because you're so good, like in the middle of things, we need people like that. You know, if Aries Mars initiates, Mars and Taurus can be like really good at pursuing things and knowing what needs to be done, knowing what needs to happen. It also often, you can be quite creative as an individual. You can, you know, enjoy making art and working with your hands for sure with Taurus, like creating things that are tangible and using your hands like romantically too, sort of being like very lovey-dovey, touchy-feely. You know, if you're in the bedroom with your lover, that's like such an annoying word, but if you're like in bed with the person you love, you're maybe like touching them, and you know, it's not enough for you to just see them. You need to have that physical contact. If you like, once again, if you want some astrological help, check out my Mars candles. They could be a great fit for you. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Now, if you were born with Mars in Gemini, this is arguably the most clever Mars, the most adaptable, adjustable, mutable Mars of them all. Well, Mars in Pisces maybe too, but Mars in Gemini makes for very sort of clever salespeople. You can be, you know, Mars and Gemini people tend to like know what other person needs, can use the intuition, and then almost like shape themselves into the person that the other person needs. Of course, that could be challenging, right? If you are like shape-shifting in a relationship and the partner is struggling to understand you. But I think like Mars and Gemini people can get out of trouble, or can, you know, assert themselves very like through words, through language. You're more likely to kind of go after things and fight through words versus like physically fighting, as Mars and Aries might, for example. And, you know, that can show up as like, you're maybe better at sending emails. Maybe you're better at like wording things. You enjoy variety. So you enjoy variety in terms of your exercise. You're going to get bored if you're doing the same thing. You will enjoy doing a lot of different things. You enjoy variety in relationships. You enjoy variety sexually. Mars and Gemini people quite often have like a more fluid definition of gender, I think, and sexuality too. It's not like Mars and Gemini is someone who will likely be open to try everything at least once. Of course, the rest of your chart has a major part to play in that, but it could suggest that you're like more open-minded, more kind of stimulated by the ideas. You get excited by the ideas in the bedroom. You get excited by person's mind, less so their genitals or their physical body. So it's like very kind of like stimulated by the mind, the ideas, sex talk, images, conversations, very, very open-minded placement, very skillful with the tongue. It's funny because we're talking about the bedroom. I've never dated a Mars and Gemini, so please confirm or say that that's not the truth. But what I meant more is like skillful with like using their knowledge. Like there is this fitness influencer, she has Venus and Mars and Gemini, and she just sort of keeps constantly changing her workouts, adding a lot of different, like there is yoga, there is, you know, there is high intensity, there is Pilates, there is bar, there's just like everything, and it's always transforming. But yeah, and in terms of like going after things with your mind, I think like everything starts in the mind, and your ability to use words, use language to achieve things is quite impressive. And so that is where you are likely to achieve a lot. Like you're maybe someone who is a writer, someone who's a teacher, someone who's like, you know, works in sales. And so your mind is like your biggest muscle. Let me know how this resonates. If you need help, you feel like you could use a little bit more persistence, a little bit more stability, check out my Mars Kazemi candle. And if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Now, if you were born with Mars in Cancer, this is a mama bear Mars. So this is Mars in the sign of the moon. And so when you have Mars in the sign of the moon, you're like, your energy levels are not consistent. Moon, you know, waxes and wanes, it grows, it shrinks, it's full, it's new. And so your energy levels with this placement up and down, and you're learning how to surf those waves. You're learning how to like chill when your body is telling you that it's empty and it needs a moment, and you're learning how to go for things when when the moon is full. So you can be someone like, you know, like your work energy might change, and maybe some days you accomplish like a ton, and then other days you don't accomplish much, and you very much like need to trust that. But the shadow could be like being a little bit more moody. The moon represents like vulnerable, sensitive. So you're likely to be conflict avoidant, and you don't want to express frustration, but then the moon gets full, the energy builds up, and you turn into werewolf. And that's where a mama bear energy comes in, right? Like if someone you love is threatened, you will like not hesitate to do whatever needs to be done. You will go all the way out. And that's why Mars and Cancer people make really great social workers and really great, you know, nurses or doctors or even lawyers that speak on behalf of like something important. So you really, you know, you kind of learning to express this energy with more control. And I think you're learning to not avoid conflicts, but instead face them straight on. If you need some additional help, Mars, exalted Mars and Mars Kazemi could be really, really great choices for you, because like I said, Mars in Cancer struggles a little bit. It's considered to be in its fall. And the fall also comes from the place of like, you know, you avoid conflict, but then when the energy builds up and you express it, you might hurt people closest to you. You might end up like hurting people that are like weak or vulnerable. The very dark manifestation of this could be someone who's like hurting their children, like beating their children, let's say, but the more positive, and you see this all the time. Like honestly, I once knew someone who had Mars in Cancer, Venus in Aries, and they were a firefighter. So, which is so funny, right? Because like Mars Cancer is water, Venus Aries is fire. They're using water to fight the fire with both of those placements, and it's like insane how perfect that fits. But yeah, like you can go, you know, you can be like so passionate, you just need to find like the right mission. And so I think like Mars Kazemi especially could be like a really great fit for you, because it trines your natal Mars versus exalted Mars opposes it. Romantically, you need true intimacy, you need true connection, you can sort of imprint really deeply. You can be like maybe a little bit moodier sexually, but like very committed, very kind of loyal once you are, and very family oriented on a lot of levels too. Please let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Now, if you were born with your Mars in Leo, this is the showstopper Mars, or performer Mars. Beyonce has Mars in Leo, and many other people. Beyonce is just the one that comes to mind. Very playful, very radiant, very much like, you know, really good at drawing attention, putting on a show, being like funny at the same time. I think like Leo placements, sometimes we don't speak enough about Leo placements and their sense of humor and how, you know, how good they are at sort of entertaining people. So Mars in Leo is like a true entertainer and very kind of driven to get recognized. And so like the way you kind of assert yourself might have that element of like getting attention, being center of attention, and making jokes and trying to be, trying to be funny, and like, so kind of like as a kid, maybe you had to do that to get your parents' attention. And now as a grown-up, you're doing that to achieve things as well. Sorry, for a second, I was like, is my microphone here? I think it is. I hope you hear me well. It would be a shame if you don't. I'm sure it's fine. If you're seeing this video, it definitely has to be fine. So yeah, like very creative. A lot of times creative, likes dancing, likes performing. Maybe you're like a fitness trainer, anything that draws attention to you. And a lot of times, maybe you want attention for the hard work you've done. It's not just you want attention for the sake of attention. Or sexually, you can be very much a performer too, putting on a show, making sounds, dressing up, using sort of maybe music, but you appreciate the partner who kind of compliments you and notices your powers and connects with it, right, and like compliments you on it. I also think of Mars and Leo on some levels as like very childlike. It's very much like, I want attention. But also very like, it could also be like a very generous partner, because like you with this placement, you're like trying to be the best version of yourself. You're trying to be like kingly, royal, and a lot of times it comes with the understanding that you need to be the best. You need to try really hard. You need to have high morals, and so other people will see and appreciate that as well. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you were born with Mars in Virgo, this is me, yay! Mars in Virgo is a Mercury-ruled Mars, so it's a very rational Mars. It's a very sort of like clever Mars on many levels, and it's a very structured Mars. I think Mars in Virgo has a little bit of similarity to Mars in Capricorn, where it's like my routines, my structures, my schedule, gotta stick to it, right? Because there is like Virgo is very much about routines. It can be, in terms of expression, it can be quite like humble. It does things, it goes after things, but then it's like, well, but I don't know if I did my best. It's like very perfectionist energy. You're likely to always feel a little dissatisfied sexually in terms of your projects, in terms of your actions. You're like, well, it could have been better. I could have put in more. So eventually you're kind of learning to let go of that perfectionism and criticism and appreciate what you do. Very hardworking. And that's another way in which Mars in Capricorn and Mars in Virgo connect, because exalted Mars is Mars in Capricorn, and it's very, very hardworking. And so is Mars in Virgo. You can very much like commit to things, get a lot done, move through your to-do list. You are driven by the need to help a lot of times, the need to serve other people. And can work with that, like can work with your hands, can work with intelligence and perfectionism and sort of precision. Like I think when I think of Mars and Virgo, I think of maybe like surgeons or someone who like cuts hair, where you need to be like really, really analytical. Sexually, you might look at sex as like sport, as a way to exercise, and you might sort of also be maybe like a little bit mental, a little bit like in your head too much versus being in the moment. So try to learn to like relax a little bit. And that's where Mars Kazemi candle comes in, because it's Mars and Scorpio, and Mars and Scorpio is actually really, really good in terms of being in the moment and enjoying the pleasures of the senses. But like also like, Mars and Virgo, because it's a Mercury ruled Mars, you might also enjoy partners who are intelligent, partners who stimulate your mind. You're likely to appreciate cleanliness, whether that means you're focused on creating cleanliness in your life, or whether you're just appreciating partners who are like clean and natural looking. Mars and Virgo is very much just like, the more natural, the better, because like it's all about earthy, natural beauty. Please let me know how this resonates. And if you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Now, if you were born with your Mars in Libra, this is another very kind of like Venusian Mars. So very gracious, very social, very much interested in community. And so when we're talking about action and initiative, a lot of your initiative will be focused on creating balance in the world. Like if you're at a party, you might be really focused on like making sure everyone is having fun. If you're at work, you really want to cooperate, you want to get along, you want for people to sort of have fairness and justice in their like professional in the professional context or any other kind of context. Because Libra is the sign of the other person and Mars tends to be very self-oriented. Mars is considered to be in detriment in Libra. And that suggests that, you know, sometimes because you're really so focused on fairness and cooperation and people getting along, you may miss on opportunities to speak up for yourself, to assert yourself. This is not a very conflict-oriented Mars. You still need to express it. So a lot of times people with Mars in Libra might express their like passionate conflict-oriented energy through creating art or through fighting on behalf of their housing association or fighting on behalf of their colleagues, right? So like you're still going to express it, but of course if you don't express it in a healthy way, it might backfire. Maybe you avoid conflicts until it's too late because you haven't expressed how you felt and your partner left because they felt like they couldn't connect with you. But it's, you know, it's like, it's a very rare exception type condition. But like I've seen time and time again that people with Mars and Libra really would prefer to avoid any drama. But a lot of times you got to watch out that this doesn't show up in you kind of craving drama through other ways, right? Once again, this energy has to come out. You still have Mars. So sometimes you might choose to like watch reality television or watch shows that are intense or gossip or sort of like, you know, or instigate conflict in your community. It's funny because like, you know, Mars in Libra is like a fighter at a dinner party where you are dressed up really beautifully and maybe you stir a conversation, move the conversation in a direction that other people don't want to go into. So sometimes like you gotta be careful that you're like not, you know, that you're not like instigating drama. I think that you're finding healthy ways of expressing your frustration. Sexually, romantically, you're likely to be drawn to beauty, to beautiful environments, to good-looking people, to, you know, like candles and soft blankets or like aesthetics and colors being well organized. Maybe like a partner taking you out to the beach or like a beach house could be like very, very sexy for you. Presents, I think, could be great. And like I also see this time and time again as like a very, very creative placement. Mars Cazimi could be a great addition to your life because this candle captures Mars conjunct the Sun in the sign of Scorpio. Cazimi is the empowered position for Mars. So it could help you take action instead of sort of being a little bit indecisive. It can help you stick to your goals. Mars in Libra sometimes struggles with like exercising. So the ideal exercise for you oftentimes is like something creative, maybe dance, maybe working in tandem with your partner. So Mars Cazimi can help with that too. Let me know how this reading resonates. And if you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Now for another powerful Mars, Mars in Scorpio. This is Mars in the sign of rulership and the feminine yin Scorpio sign. And so Mars has a special affinity, special connection with Scorpio because Scorpio is persistent, it's passionate, it's focused. So Mars really likes being here. Mars likes being in Aries, but Aries could be a little bit like, this is exciting, let's do this. That is exciting, let's do this. And it could be like, go into it, but not always finish it. Mars in Scorpio always finishes things, be that sexually, be that in their life. They're very, they're very determined, very focused, very like, they made a decision, they're on it. It's so impressive. Like, I admire you guys. I admire seeing how good you are at pursuing things. It's a very passionate placement, very intense, magnetic, very sexual placement, able to attract you with a deep stare. Can be a little bit controlling sometimes without maybe being open about it always, but can you know, want to know everything about you, be like an investigator, a journalist, sort of like fully like one track mind sometimes, but can also transform that and move forward, right? And like let a part of them die and be reborn. I really like thinking of Mars and Scorpio as a ninja. If they have an idea, they're not often going to share it with you, but they might tell you like, I don't know, 10 months later when they have already reached their goals. Highly intuitive, highly passionate, very attracted to situations, to people, to energies that involve an element of death and rebirth. So like, what is that? Whitewater rafting, scuba diving, you know, sort of mining, maybe firefighting, like anywhere, because they have they're very brave and courageous, and they crave intensity. So they might naturally go towards things that have an element of like intensity. Sexually, they really, you know, they tend to be quite giving. There could be like a lot of oral, there could be a lot of like longer, passionate kind of lovemaking, I think. Let me know how this resonates and if this describes you. And if you want to know more, book a reading on my website. I'd be happy to look at the rest of your chart and tell you what it all means together. If you were born with Mars in Sagittarius, Mars in Sagittarius is a Jupiter-ruled Mars, and it's a very kind of adventurous, conquistador, teacher type Mars, right? It's like a fighter that gets on a horse and goes out there. So you assert yourself, you express yourself very honestly, very like idealistically, directly, right? Sometimes maybe that directness doesn't serve you well, especially if it turns into like being a little bit tactless. But a lot of it comes from that like sort of excitement, right? It's a fire sign. So you get fired up about something and you want to tell people, you want to share it with people, you want to teach people. So here it's like one asserts oneself through like going for things, always craving like the next kind of mission, the next challenge, the next adventure. And sexually, you might actually be turned on by going on adventures or by being with partners that are different, that are teaching you something, like someone who speaks the foreign language, someone who studied philosophy, someone who knows astrology, someone who can like or open you up to, you know, to new ideas, to new possibilities, new philosophies. Always another thing too, always kind of craving self-improvement. I think Mars in Sagittarius always wants to do better and grow and pursue new things. Loves traveling because it's a Sagittarius, it's a Jupiter-ruled sign, loves learning, loves teaching, and can be quite impulsive sometimes, I think, both like romantically and in terms of their goals, in terms of taking action. Like if you get fired up about something because it's a fire sign, you're just going for it. If you want a little bit of like persistence and stability, check out my Exalted Mars candle, which is Mars in Capricorn, which could help sort of direct your energy a little bit better and reach your goals a little bit faster. And if you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Speaking of exalted Mars, if you were born with Mars in Capricorn, this is Mars in the sign of exaltation. Exaltation in astrology is kind of like being an honored guest at the king's house, where you get a lot of benefits, but you don't have to do the dishes or do the laundry. So with Mars in Capricorn, we get the power of, like, you know, like exaltation always limits the planet. So it's like clamping its power a little bit, but it's in a good way, because Mars in Capricorn is Mars in its Saturn ruled sign. It gets that Saturnian strategy. It gets a little bit, it's like a little bit cautious. It's a little bit reserved, right? At least on the outside, but it has the power to like navigate the system and use the caution and use the strategy to its advantage. I always see time and time again people with Mars and Capricorn are the best at finding deals. They're really good at like knowing how to maximize things, you know, like where to go, where to shop. Of course, the rest of your chart will play a part in that, but like I've seen, you know, I've definitely seen them be really, really good at following the rules. And then, of course, they're also good at breaking the rules, right? Like Mars in Capricorn is it's a very kind of sexual placement. Capricorn is connected with the devil in the tarot. So it could be quite, like, and it's also an earth sign. So it could be quite pleasure driven, quite sort of, I feel like the word is like escaping me, but like very, like pleasure driven, very sensual, very kind of like my first ever boyfriend had Mars in Capricorn, and he claimed that before we met, he like built a bed for sex. So you use that earthy, he was also a Taurus sun, so like earthy, creative energy. I'm gonna make something with Mars in Capricorn. I know how to. He was also a car mechanic, so I know how to, and I'm gonna create something that is gonna like be moving as a car or gonna be used for sex. So there is like very strong ability to use the perseverance and the focus of Saturn to create things and to maximize them. So like I said, to like work within the rules of the system, because you know the rules of the system. You can make the system whatever it is, like shopping websites or company you work for or a mortgage company. You can use that to your advantage and reach your goals and achieve long-term success. If you want to know more, book a reading on my website, and please let me know how this resonates. If you are someone, if you were born with your Mars in Aquarius, you are also Saturn-ruled Mars, but here it's Saturn. I'm a traditional astrologer, so Aquarius is ruled by Saturn in traditional astrology. I know a lot of times people are like, but isn't it Uranus? Not in traditional astrology. So if you were born with Mars in Aquarius, you are someone who Saturnian, but Saturn in Aquarius is like an outsider, like a rebel, like an outcast. So you will always have a little bit of like unique, unconventional, individualistic, and like unpredictable quality to you. You're eccentric, and the way you take action is eccentric, and it changes maybe because sometimes you feel like speaking your mind, other times you feel like maybe going to the boss and talking to the boss, or like telling someone off versus talking to the boss. So there is like very eccentric streak, very independent, and very like I think interested in making change happen, reforming things, changing the way things used to be done, right? Like in order to move to a brighter, better future. So like some kind of like very revolutionary at times. You are likely to be very people-oriented, very friendly, and have a lot of friendships, but can also be like at times detached, right? Especially sexually. Like maybe you love sex and you get like excited by sex, but at the same time you can also keep a distance and you can be like calm and level-headed about it. In fact, people with Mars in Aquarius might often get even more excited by the idea of sex than the sex itself. Like talking about sex, thinking about it, exploring, imagining, and then they're just like tired and want to take a nap, especially if they have like Moon in Taurus or something. So you might be also attracted to people who are unconventional. You might be open to experimenting sexually, open to trying it with different genders, different spaces, different times, etc. And so, like Aquarius, I think, is often quite like a study of contradictions. So sort of love humanity, hate people, love sex, sometimes don't want to do it, or like, very creative, but then also very scientific. So I think that like swinging back and forth between those energies, as well as like being passionate one moment, being a little bit more detached in your head the other moment, but very like, very in the head too. If you're connected to something, maybe if you're like dating someone who shares your ideas, you can feel more connected to them, versus like Cancer rising might enjoy dating, or Cancer Mars might enjoy dating someone who has like similar background, similar family, childhood life as them. Last but not least, if you were born with Mars in Pisces, Mars in Pisces is Jupiter ruled Mars, and it's a yin, feminine Mars. So it's very sensitive, it's very empathetic, it's very kind and agreeable on many levels, really adaptable and very kind of, changeable. I think Mars and Pisces being a water sign, the energy can go up and down. And sometimes they can be a little bit like hard to pin down. A little bit, yeah, like go with the flow type energy, thinking of it as the opposition of Virgo. Virgo will be like precise. We agreed to meet at 12:05. I'm here at 12:04. Mars and Pisces might be like, ooh, I like overslept, or, I didn't feel like it, or sort of. So there's a little bit of like ups and downs energetically. Your energy and your desires are very much affected by your mood, by the dreams you had, by intuitive signals you may have received. And the same sort of your sexuality can also be affected by like your moods and by intuitive messages. It's a very like Mars in Pisces is a very creative placement. It has like a power to inspire feelings in others through art, through talking about spirituality, through writing poetry. So many like artists and actors have this placement. You may be, sometimes you may be a little bit self-protective and maybe not sharing everything with people in your life, because in reality you're quite like sensitive and vulnerable, but you might protect yourself. Yeah, and I think if you're looking for any help with perseverance and reaching your goals, I highly recommend Mars Kazemi, because that is Mars in the sign of rulership Scorpio, and it's still trine your natal Mars. Very romantic, I think, very like, but I think like, sexually, you're probably someone who a little bit more adaptable to what your partner wants and to what your partner kind of gives you, because you have like very intuitive, receptive side to you. So you just kind of, you like pick up on their energy and maybe adapt to them a lot more. But you may enjoy, you may enjoy music. You may feel strongly connected to music, making it or listening to it. You may be like, you may need maybe to drink a glass of wine, to take a bath in order to get yourself in the mood, because once again, the mood is like really, really important to this placement. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. As always, if you have any ideas, if you feel like there is a video you'd like me to make, something you want me to talk about, please let me know. And I hope you're enjoying these series of planets through the zodiac signs. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.